Commissioner Buclo is absent. Commissioner Shapiro
Here.
and Commissioner Riley.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Yes, okay. Okay. All right, any brief announcements from staff?
I actually do. I wanted to let you all know that staff is going to be bringing a resolution for our climate friendly area in the next month or so to the council. It's going to be a resolution just acknowledging our climate friendly area. I can send all that information out to you. RVCOG has done a whole, they've reviewed all of our areas and they've done a whole study on our climate friendly area. And I'll send you the map and send you all that information prior to the meeting. But the state is asking that we acknowledge the CFA. They don't care if we adopt it or anything. They just want us to acknowledge that we know that there is a CFA for our area. So if you have any questions, go through that document, look at the map. One thing you should be aware of is a portion of that CFA is in our historic district, which is along 99, and that will trump all of our historic district criteria. So I've been in conversations with the Architectural Review Committee, and we could probably apply some of the design criteria, but it's most of it's gonna. One of the big issues is it allows for a building height of 50 feet. So that'll be a
Oh, you're
big,
kidding.
No, it's,
and it doesn't require parking. Okay,
Madam Chair, I have a question about the staff.
Yes.
okay. So Derek, I've been told Derek Volkart is on the phone.
Okay,
So I will mark him present.
Derek,
yeah,
here,
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. I'm sorry. I just phoned in instead of tried to go through Zoom. So I appreciate it. Sorry about that.
all right. So Commissioner Riley, you had a
Did you,
question?
did you say that we were going to make a resolution or the council?
The council will adopt a resolution.
But it'll come to us first or something?
No, but so you're gonna get another shot at this. This is just the phase one. You're gonna get a shot at it when we have to rezone everything. And that'll all come to you.
Because I got a cannon ready for that.
So is most of the area is on 99?
Yeah, most of it. It encompasses the Gateway site, the TID site. It goes up 99 to Suncrest. There's a triangular piece on the, what's that, the west side. It doesn't go across. The only part it goes across to is the vacant parcel across from Gateway.
Okay,
And then we also have another big rezone that's going to be occurring on 99, which is the TGM grant. And that is going to kind of coincide with the CFA, and it's all going to be similar. It's all about work, live. So we'll be implementing a lot of mixed use, high density along the highway.
okay.
That's what they want to make it work, live, walkable, all that.
Great.
What does TGM stand for?
The
No.
grant management.
Transportation side.
What is it?
Transportation.
Transportation grant management. It's the Bear Creek Transportation Grant Management. It's being done by ODOT and DLCD.
Right. There've been lots of meetings about, I've gone to a couple of those meetings.
What was that?
There've been a few meetings, they've held a few meetings.
Yes, right. Have
I've
you
gone
been
to a
part of
couple
those? Yes.
Pretty exciting ideas.
Yeah.
So when you say it trumps the historic district, that means that whatever the rules are for building in historic districts now will have different rules. We'll have to go with the CFA rules.
Well, in terms of, we might be able to implement some design criteria, but in terms of having the height limit, it's going to be quite a bit higher limit. It's 50 feet.
Wow,
Right.
that's really tall.
It's just crazy that all towns have to comply with this. When we went, Joy and I went to that meeting.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
It's a state mandate. The governor mandated this before she left office.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So
Any oth-
that's all I have today
Okay,
for announcements.
thank you.
Oh.
Joy,
I have
Commissioner
a-
Riley.
I have another question about stuff coming up. I went to the Fire District 5 meeting, and they said that the truck stop, there's a truck stop application coming. Is that,
That's been approved. That was approved almost a year ago. They're proposed, they're gonna put a gas station right in front of the truck stop that's existing there, yeah.
oh, and that's it? That's the whole,
Yeah, it's a gas station.
On
It's gonna be a mini mart gas station
Another one right across from the other one
Yeah.
that's there?
On Valley View? That one?
on West Valley View, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that went through site plan review, gosh, I think it was a year ago.
it was before my,
Well, I remember when they were talking about that, and that's what the development was all up in arms about, right? But I,
That was a different one, the truck stop. That was a really nice truck stop
Yeah.
that I've been
so
told.
this is different.
This is just a mini mart. It's gonna be a mini mart, a restaurant, fast food restaurant and gas station. Right in front of the existing truck stop.
Why did the truck stop change its mind, do you know? After they actually won that, you know?
they,
thought
no,
I thought
they were
lost that.
reversed. It was.
It got
reversed.
denied, yeah, it got denied. Yeah. That was my understanding.
okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, great. So we'll move on to approval of minutes. There was no quorum last month. No, I'm sorry, this is the minutes of,
This is
the
the previous.
May.
minutes, Yeah,
I'm like, what month are we in? So the minutes for May 23rd, there wasn't a quorum, there were only two of us here, so I'm happy to make a motion to pass the minutes from May 23rd.
I'll second.
Great.
Uh,
And anyone
Gen-
else?
Generally, the chair can't make a motion.
well, there were only two of them
There's
here.
only the two of us here.
Oh, okay.
So how do we do that? If there are only two here? We didn't have a quorum. Can we vote on it?
Can we-
I think there's, where is it stated that the chair can't make a motion? I think the chair can make a motion.
Can the chair
Sorry.
make a motion? He said, where does it say the chair cannot make a motion?
Right, the chair can't make a motion.
Okay,
Can she can second a motion.
Can she second a motion?
Then how do we get these approved?
yeah, how do we,
Because they were the only two here.
was there a meeting?
No,
there was no meeting.
There was
So
no
what's
meeting.
to
There's no
approve?
quorum.
Well, it doesn't need to be people who were here who can pass,
Okay.
can approve the minutes, as long as they have reviewed the minutes.
All right, well, I will withdraw that motion and see if anyone would like to make a motion.
I move approval of the minutes from May 23rd, 2023.
I second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great, so they are
Pass.
approved.
I have another question. Okay, sorry, but I do.
Yes, Commissioner Fry.
Didn't we have a meeting in April with minutes for the,
That was canceled.
oh, we can't,
We showed up. Yeah.
April?
April? No, that was May, the month before. we had-
These
April is
are
when we
the-
had the meeting
these
with
are-
the attorney, right?
April had a meeting, May. only
Those,
she
I
and
think
should
those
have-
meeting minutes were approved, weren't they?
Yeah, they were approved.
When?
When would they have been approved?
That's a
Because
good
we had the meeting
We
in
had
May and nobody
the-
came.
Oh, maybe not. Yeah. My mistake.
Good.
Time
Yeah.
flies.
We'll bring it
That's- I
back.
didn't think about that. Yeah, because June was canceled, May, we didn't have a quorum. So yes, so the minutes are, okay, so you will,
So April minutes?
yes, April minutes will be sent out. Okay, well, the next item is actually a follow-up from our meeting in April, I believe. Yeah, on April 25th, we reviewed a study session, or we had a study session, and it was about revision of chapter 2. So I don't know if I need to review that. Has everyone read it? It's about the duties of the chair and putting this sort of in alignment with the way the city council does it. as I
Point of
understand it.
order is that we didn't, nobody's here, but maybe they're online is number 4.
Oh, I totally missed the public
Sorry.
comment. Sorry, excuse me. I'm going to back up. Public comment on agenda items, and there's no one in the public on Zoom or in the building.
I think we do have,
Do we have some?
Are we?
we have 2 attendees.
Oh,
Can
how
we
do we
see
see
that?
that?
One of them must be Derek and the other is Derek Mans.
I'm 541-227-3794.
Yep, okay. But nobody's requested to speak tonight
Okay.
unless Derek Manzi would like to speak.
Who's the other person here?
Derek Manzi?
Oh,
So can
Oh, I
we
don't
not
see
see
him.
that? I don't
How
see him. I only
Do
see.
you, do you have participants? Can you go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen?
let me see if
Oh.
it's under more.
You might not be
Here's
able to see.
participants. You have to go to more and
It's in Zoom part.
he doesn't show up on my participant.
Me neither.
Under attendees?
Yeah, I went to attend,
Yeah.
I went to participants.
I see ex
And then did you
officio.
see attendees next to participants?
Oh, I see.
Up
Oh,
the
yes,
top.
I see there too. Okay.
Yep.
Is
And
ex
then there's
officio-
oh yeah, Derek Manzi. Okay.
That-
where do
Now
you
I
see-
see it.
Where do you see?
So here, when you see participants up here, there's attendees and just click on that.
Oh, okay.
You guys
Thank you.
figure that out.
So I'm just curious who the ex officio is.
That's the camera on the,
Oh, it's just there.
it's just
Gotcha.
there.
Okay.
Yeah. So nobody's,
That
the
makes it
only
confusing.
person that's in the meeting that isn't here is.
Is Derek. Okay.
Derek.
What happened to my camera? I'm no longer.
I knew when I saw the new computers and stuff that this was going to be a slower meeting.
It's gonna take some time to get
A
used to.
learning curve.
Would you like a staff?
Somehow my
report?
camera went off and it's not. I was
Oh, did it
I was
freeze up?
there a minute ago and now I'm not. My name's there, but not my face. So I might have accidentally. There it is. I see it's hovering over. Okay, there it is. Okay, I know. I do this all day long, but I was looking over there. Okay.
Should I be off of mute?
All right.
I'm fine.
All right, so no one is asking to speak, so we can move past the public comment, right? Great. All right, so let's go back to the discussion. So.
Would you like a staff report or would you like to just jump into the
It'd be
discussion?
great to have a staff report. Thank you.
So as you all recall, back in April, the planning commission attended the study session. The city attorney Dave Lohman here presented and it was well received. There were concerns about me. Following that, we had some concerns about meetings running efficiently and smoothly and the ability to perform the duties within the meeting timeframe. So I think you all requested that we have a discussion about changing chapter 2, making some changes to chapter 2 in regards to duties of chair and vice chair. And before you tonight are the proposed changes. You requested that it reflect the city council section 3 agendas, which I have attached in your staff in the staff report. And then so this language that has been put in here in red and underlined is how that change would be made. And then, of course, the strike through, and it reflects the council rules and procedures that they have for their agenda criteria. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or you can go ahead and discuss what you would like to see.
Are you looking at me?
I thought you were going to raise your hand. You look like you were ready to. Okay. Any questions about what we're talking about here?
I do have discussion.
Okay,
Okay, so if you would take one of those and pass it down, when we asked for something that reflected the council rules, I expected it to be more closely reflecting and so I took the council rules and just changed the words because I like things that are enumerated, you know, like this is A and B. And I think it's easier for everyone to understand and use in that way. And so I also, in the way not the rules, but our planning commission ordinance, it has like, the chair does this, and in the middle of it says, vice chair does that, and then under that, the chair, and it's just really kind of a mess. But in our bylaws, the rules for the chair are enumerated, and it's very organized and clear. So I was thinking that it would be better to just codify more closely what we have in the bylaws, because that's what we've been working off of, and that would make it consistent. So we wouldn't be like, well, it says in the bylaws this, but it says in the ordinance that, you know, and that way it would just be one thing to reference. And there are a couple of things I thought we might want to add in here. And that's the stuff in red. Because when you say the duties are this, if something comes up and it's not listed, then there's, in my mind, always that question, well, if it's not there, does it mean we can't or we can? You know, so I think leaving an open thing there in case something comes up, who knows what, that we would want to add to the duties that are listed. But the duties that we list in the bylaws are so much more clear and what we are actually doing than the narrative in the ordinances.
Because
Legalese.
okay, I just want to be clear, what you handed out right now is what's written in the council's
These are the
rules,
council
and then you
rules.
just you plugged in planning commission where it's at
Right.
city council.
Yeah, and where it says city manager, I put in community development director, CD.
So it's consistent.
Yeah, it's consistent with those rules. And the
Concise,
duties,
more
so, and the
concise.
duties of the chair of the vice chair are separate because they are the same duties when you are the vice chair. So it's just like, and that's that. And so the whole point of contention, other than making sure our meetings are a little more efficient than they were at first, is about agendas and about who makes the agenda. And that's where the conflict was between the bylaws and the ordinance, was who makes the agenda. And I thought we all agreed that it would be the leadership team of the chair and vice chair in our case, and the staff. And so that's why I thought, rather than have the agenda part up in the chair's duties, we should make a separate heading for agendas and describe how we want. And this also reflects, this is how it is for the council. Theirs are the same way. They have it separately, and they have these same, like, you know, it has to go this way. And I put some days in there just to make it easier for staff. Like, you know, if you do want something on the agenda, you can't call staff the day before, you know, you at least give them at least 10 days notice to figure out if it can go on there. And then the staff decides based on their time constraints and the item being requested, whether or not whether or not it can work. And if it can't work that meeting, then it could go to the next meeting.
My recollection was that I thought we agreed that the agenda would be set by the staff, and then the chair and vice chair would review it with the staff person. That's what it said in the.
Well, it
That's what it
says
said.
in the ordinance, it says review to see if it's consistent with what the planning commission wants.
Mhm,
And that should not be a problem,
mhm.
but there should be the chair of the planning commission should have a little bit of authority,
Mhm.
because, you know, he's or she is the leader, and you know, it's cooperative. And I don't, you know, whether you want to use these words or not, I do believe it should be a cooperative arrangement, not just one side gets to say it and one side doesn't.
I don't think, Okay, I thought that that's actually what that change that we got said also, but that rather than the chair writing the agenda, that staff wrote the agenda. Chair or vice chair can request that things be added. Any one of us can request that anything be added, but just because of the efficiency and she knows what's coming up, it makes sense that the staff
Right.
would create the agenda.
And that's still in here.
But that's
That's
what
what
it
it
says.
says.
It
That's
says what
exactly
it
what it
says.
says.
Okay.
The
And-
community development director shall prepare the agenda.
And
Yeah.
then the presiding officer can review it and discuss agendas prior to distribution. But, you know, yeah,
Okay,
I
because
mean, I like
we are,
the conciseness.
of course. I don't think there's a question about that. I mean, it's the first time we're seeing it. Obviously, you guys have seen it. So it's the first time we need a little time to, at least I do, need a little time to really, I'm not too sure. It will take some
maybe
time,
we should
whether we do it
continue
here.
it.
It
Since
might-
there's only 4 of us here, maybe we should continue this,
You know,
or 5. Sorry, Derek.
That's okay. You could have said 4.5 and that would have been fine too. So thank you.
And I mean, I want to compare it to what's already written and what's different. And are there things added in here that's not in here?
Anything added, I put in red.
Okay, so
Yeah.
everything here is verbatim from what's in here? Yeah. Okay. When I like to look it over and
Okay,
for
that's fine.
myself
Maybe
to
we
see
should-
that that's really
I could move,
where it all fits.
if the chair would like, I could move for continuance till the next
Well,
meeting.
I'm one person. I don't know what other people want.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I'd like to compare them also. I mean, the sounds, okay, I just would want to make sure that we're not missing anything from, since the wording is different. But yeah, I mean, sounding okay.
I would want to make sure, I mean, I'm glad our city attorney is here so he could also make sure we're not missing something.
If we continued it, then staff would have time also to kind of,
Yeah.
And I just
Sure.
got this tonight too,
Uh-huh.
but I just like, instead of having, one long paragraph, I mean, to have it consistent and,
Mhm.
more concise. And absolutely, I think we should. So everyone has a chance to look it up.
Can I make a motion?
What?
Derek,
Can I
Derek,
make a motion, Madam Chair?
can you make a motion? Candy?
Yeah. Will the Madam Chair entertain a motion?
Sure.
Acting chair.
Yes.
I move to continue this item until the next regular scheduled meeting.
For a second?
Second.
All in favor? This doesn't require like a real vote, right?
It's a
Just all in favor.
I,
Go with that. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so this will be continued to next month.
And I thank the counselor for her work on it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Did you hear what he said?
Council something. What did you say there?
I said counselor and I meant commissioner. I'm elevating Commissioner Riley to counselor right now. So thank you for that work.
Thank you for her work.
Thank you. Thanks for interpreting.
Got it.
we need subtitles.
Yeah, I subtitles for sure.
Kind of muffled.
It is a little muffled, yeah.
Kind of
Okay.
echoes in here too. I think.
It does. Okay, great. Well, then we have any more discussion about this? I mean, we're moving on. Okay. So now we have a public hearing. And so I need to open the hearing, right? So we are opening the hearing at 6:58. What?
Wait.
What am I missing? That's the next.
But you have, you
This-
read some stuff and
I'm
then
going-
there's a staff
Yeah,
report
yeah.
and then we,
I'm about to do that. Yeah, okay. So the City of Talent Planning Commission has the authority to hold legislative hearings in accordance with Oregon public meeting laws as described in ORS 192.610 through 192.710. Our decision on legislative issues is advisory to the City Council, who make the final decision to approve, modify, or deny. City planner has determined that the approval criteria that apply to the following application or issue currently before the Planning Commission are as follows.
Talent Municipal Code Title 18, Chapter 18.190, Talent Comprehensive Plan, Element A, Citizen Involvement, Oregon Land Use Planning Goals, Goal 1, Citizen Involvement, Goal 2, Land Use Planning, Oregon Administrative Rules, OAR 6600180020.
Thank you. Evidence and testimony in this hearing must be directed toward these criteria or other criteria in the city's zoning code, comprehensive plan, subdivision code, or other applicable land use and development-related regulations that the person believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient clarity and detail to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond accordingly to the issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Before the end of the hearing, any participant may request a continuance. In addition, whether or not there is a continuance, a participant may request that the record of the proceedings remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing. The Planning Commission will consider whether or not they will continue the hearing or leave the record open for a specified length of time for new written testimony or evidence. When called to speak, please come to the microphone, sign in and state your name and residential address for the public record. Please keep your comments to the applicable criteria as identified by city staff. When called to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and residential address for the public record. Please direct your comments to the applicable criteria as identified by city staff. The following time limits are allotted for public testimony. 15 applicant, 15 minutes, individuals, 5 minutes, and individual representing a group, 10 minutes, applicant rebuttal, 10 minutes. After listening to testimony and considering the evidence, the Planning Commission may vote to recommend approval with conditions, or denial of the application unless the matter is continued or tabled to another date-specific hearing. If you have any questions or do not understand the procedure, please raise your hand to ask them now.
And since there's no public to speak, right?
Would you like a staff report?
Staff chair.
So we'll do staff. Okay, so we will start with the staff report.
Do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to be able to review like items on page 23 and 24, section C in like a linear order. So of you, specific questions, not deliberated, but just to review. Is that what you're going to do?
When you say pages 23 and 24, what are you referring to?
Section C and the. If you go. Page 23. Yes, you scroll down. The non-conforming use, just some. Where's it might start on page 22.
Are you speaking of packet page number? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
go
she's referring to the packet page number, yes.
Thank you.
While you review, is that okay?
Sure.
So before you tonight is a proposed text amendment to the Talent Municipal Code Title 18, Chapter 18.19, non-conforming uses, lots and structures. This code addresses lot structures and uses that are no longer compatible with the current zoning code. As you all know, we all experienced a fire, and this is how this all came about, is because of the Alameda fire. It was declared an emergency due to a third of the city being demolished. And as a result, we were allowing like for like rebuilds. But we then have since reviewed our non-conforming chapter 18.195 and found that the non-conforming ordinance does not allow a rebuild at all. So that's what the city attorney and the city manager and I decided that we probably, and as a result, council has requested that the proposed code amendments to chapter 18 to allow there to be a time frame in which non-conforming use can be rebuilt in the zoning code that is no longer allowed. Because the way it came about, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, is after the fire, there was a just prior to the fire, there was a zone code change in the multifamily residential zone district that prohibited single-family homes to be built. So after the fire, then because of that, there was the question of whether we allow single families to be rebuilt but as a result, and because of state statute, we do require single family rebuilds. So even though this came about because of the fire, this has nothing to do with the fire area whatsoever, because they will still have the ability to rebuild until September 2025. And then they have up to 2 years once they've got an application in by then. So this code amendment will not affect them. It doesn't even apply to the fire victims, just to get that clear. So this is for future natural disasters that occur, or any kind of, if one house burns just by strike of lightning, then and it's no longer permitted in the high density, it will have the ability to be rebuilt within a 2-year time frame, and possibly an extension based on a request to the community development director. They can ask for a year extension if they are not able to rebuild in that 2-year time frame. So that's kind of the code change in a nutshell. And then if you haven't reviewed the changes that have been redlined in your code, you can certainly review those now, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And Dave's here to answer questions too, because he wrote a lot of it.
I have a question what page is this? It's 18.195. It's on page 20, 18.195.010 intent. The first thing that's struck out is where it says the such usage are generally considered to be incompatible with the permitted uses in the zone in which they are located, and their continuance shall therefore be permitted only in strict compliance with the restrictions of this chapter. But what struck out is, however, existing single-family residential uses shall not be treated as non-conforming uses unless such use is voluntarily discontinued. I'm just wondering why we would strike that. Why wouldn't we allow it? Because that could affect, like, if people don't build by 2025 or don't, so that would still allow them to rebuild.
The code was confusing and it was contradictory because we had that one statement in the intent, but then it didn't allow in the actual, even though that's the intent of the code, it doesn't allow a non-conforming structure to be reestablished if the zone has changed. So it contradicted what was actually in the code.
So we can't.
But I know what you're saying, and past practices have been that we didn't address that as single family residents were not addressed as being non-conforming. So that's why we went forward with making the changes to allow a time frame in which to rebuild.
Thanks.
If I might add, the clause at the end saying unless such use is voluntarily discontinued. It seemed confusing. And so having the sentence in there at all in effect was not consistent with the proposed change. Because the proposed change doesn't have anything to do with the voluntary discontinuance. It has to do with involuntary discontinuance.
The proposed change.
The red line that we
Oh, yeah.
before you tonight,
Uh-huh.
the changes
Right.
that were put in there to allow a rebuild within a certain time frame. The way it was originally written, that was in there, and it was confusing because then when you read down into the ordinance, it doesn't allow you to rebuild anything. So we were like, okay, does this only apply to single families? And does it only apply unless such use or voluntary discontinued. So it didn't make any sense. So this clarifies that, yes, you have a time frame in which to build. You can build whatever structure or use that was destroyed in a natural disaster. You can go back and rebuild it within a certain time frame. Which in this case, it's up to 3 years, minimum of 2 years.
So after that time's up, then if somebody wanted to, like, let's say that there was still an empty lot that nothing had happened with in the fire zone, they could not build a single family unit. They'd have to build multifamily.
They aren't going to be able to anyway after September 2025. That's when the emergency declaration expires and executive order will go away. And state statute only allows until 2025 to rebuild what was existing.
Okay.
Well,
But-
just to clarify, that's,
but-
that's referring to structures destroyed in
Right,
the
right.
Alameda fire.
That's what you're referring.
Yeah, and I was just talking about.
Oh,
that
in
area.
general?
No, I was thinking about that area in particular because we
Yeah.
changed the zoning of it before the fire and then the fire happened. So I was just wondering what would happen after that time. So after that time, after the 2025 date, nobody can build a single family structure there.
They have to
anymore.
meet the high density criteria, build a duplex.
Okay.
Commissioner, did you, Commissioner Shapiro? Oh,
Oh, you said the statute, the state statute, sorry, pointing at you. The state statute is about the fire. It's not.
No, it's
Uh,
not. Oh,
it
that's
is,
that.
okay.
Sorry.
That was.
And this proposed code amendment is somewhat consistent with the state statute.
It's consistent, I think, with the spirit of the state statute.
Yeah.
But it is an independent thing addressing disasters that would occur apart from the Alameda fire.
Hypothetical disasters.
Yeah,
Right,
hopefully not existing, not
yes.
occurring.
So
Commissioner Riley?
I have a question that's past that. So if somebody wanted to ask something. I have a question starting with C. So if you have questions before that, I could wait.
1C, F1C.
It's page 20. Page 22, C.
There's no
It goes on to
changes to
page
C.
23, maybe.
Change of non-conforming use, is that what
Yeah,
you're?
There's no
Yeah,
changes to
my
C.
question, so, okay, I'm gonna go ahead then if that's okay.
Yes, yes, please do.
Okay, so this, I wouldn't bring this up because there's not a change here, except it's later on, it refers to this paragraph. And I know I'm being unimaginative perhaps, but it says if a non-conforming use involving a structure is replaced by another use, that new use shall conform to the title. So I just can't think of what that means. Like you have a non-conforming use, like a residential use,
Well,
and
I-
then,
for an example, that would be, let's say it was in the commercial district and we didn't allow in the commercial district, it was a drive-through restaurant. Okay, and we don't allow drive-through any longer. That would be a change in use. The actual use wouldn't be non-conforming.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because I guess I was just so locked in on the whole like high density, single family thing that I wasn't thinking outside of that.
Right.
But what this would say, though, they could rebuild a drive-through restaurant again, because that's what it was when it was when it was damaged, right? So when it was built, it was allowed. Now they've been here 20 years, we've changed the code, it burns down, and it's now a different use. It's only residential. They'd still be able to rebuild a drive-through restaurant because that's what the original use was.
Provided it meets all the criteria. of
Right.
C.
Right, okay.
Right. Yes.
Okay,
So this is about all zoning, not just high density, which I think I
Right.
was getting kind of
Right.
stuck
So,
on.
yeah, this will,
Just
this
is
will be
about
everything.
all, everything, not just that. Okay, that
Right.
kind of confused
it's
me. I
just
think.
uses.
I think we're
lots,
so
and
used to the
structure.
Alameda dealing with
yeah,
changes and that,
So
that forget about
Take that out of your head.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not
Because
dealing
you
with
can
the
see
fire.
why I'm like,
That's how this all came about though, so
Okay.
it makes sense you would think that, because
Okay.
we did get people from subdivisions saying, wait, we
Right.
don't want to see high density in our
Right.
development, we don't have the lot, we don't have the large enough lots, it doesn't make any sense, that kind of thing, so
Okay.
that's when we started reviewing our code.
okay.
okay, so this is gonna, so I'm gonna go back to the Alameda fire. So it sunsets on 2025, and the reason why they wouldn't be able, they'd still have to do whatever code, build whatever zone it is because the 3 years have already happened, right? So that's why. So then it sort of goes, it sort of reverts to this. So they'd already have had their 3 years to rebuild.
They had an opportunity to
Right.
rebuild, they did not seize that opportunity, and therefore they will have to build to the existing zoning criteria.
Make sure every lot in my neighborhood is rebuilt by 2025, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Get those lots built.
There's only like 2 left. It's actually not much.
There's 2.
I think that, well, actually they're built, I think there's only 2 that we don't know what's happening on. Other discussions that got more, sure. go on.
So I thought I read something in C about the planning commission deciding something, but I don't see that here. This is,
That same section we were just reading.
yeah. Maybe it was,
Second line of C.
oh, yeah, determine,
Oh,
oh,
yeah, there is, 'cause
Thank
it's
you.
small letters. It's hard to, doesn't stand out at you.
Okay, oh, yeah, I don't know, maybe it says it somewhere else, but so that would be a type 3. If someone came to us with a new use and we would determine if it was more restrictive, would that be type 3?
Um,
And that.
Oh,
see,
she's
what-
still there.
Because we're not, this is what I hate about conditional use too, is that it always seems so objective and for us to decide whether it affects the character of an area doesn't seem like anything we can use criteria to decide. And it doesn't say here, maybe it says it somewhere else, if that's like an appeal to the planning commission or an application, how would that work?
What page are you on?
22. C. You understand the question? I'm asking?
Yeah, I'm just reading the code above it to make sure it doesn't address that.
And can I piggyback a question on that question that's related to it, if you can hear me? If not, I'll be silent.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. And so I guess this was probably for Dave, is it more that the route for the planning commission to determine a use that would be equivalent in a particular zone, or an approved use? Is that why that language? Well, that's not added, so that doesn't. I'm sorry, I'll retract that question. I'm curious to get an answer to yours, Commissioner Riley. Thank you.
I think in this case, it would probably, we would just take it to the planning commission to make that determination. If they wanted to establish the use that was. And follow and we'd ask them to make findings that it would not, that it would not affect the character of the area. So they would have to, we would actually have the applicant make those findings that it would not change the character of the area. Or adversely affect the existing or pre-existing uses. So I think that would be, it's objective, but they would have to make those findings to us to make that determination. You wouldn't just get it and say, hey, what do you think?
But their findings wouldn't be based on criteria, because we don't have any criteria about character of a area. And I don't, yeah.
It would just be very subjective, like a lot of planning is.
If there was some way we could harden that up, I would think it would be fairer. Because, you know, the subjective just leads you down a road, and then, you know, then people aren't treated the same for the same things.
I'm sorry, can I reply to that?
Sure, Derek, please.
Commission, I understand the concern, especially after we rewrote the Title 17 and 18 zone code changes, subdivision code, so that we could have clear and objective standards. But I do think that use determination is subjective, simply because somebody has to decide what uses comply. I remember the former community development director said that somebody was considering applying for a mini golf business, and you know, whether or not that would fit the particular zone that person was looking at has to go to somebody to decide. Like, we would have never have captured that criteria and put yay or nay into a zone for mini golf. I think one more recent was like the compatibility of the brewery or the coffee use, you know, that was determined, I think maybe by us, maybe by staff. But I mean, I guess I would just say I'm not sure how we escape the subjective nature of that is my only take on that. But I hear you, Commissioner. Thanks.
So, you know, the big application we had for Belmont, Luba didn't remand that, they reversed it based on one street ordinance that was interpreted two different ways by the applicant and by the hearings officer. And based on that only, they reversed that application. And so anybody that comes up that says you don't have clear and objective criteria could go to Luba and they're going to reverse it. So we have to have something codified that we can hang on that.
Madam Chair, can I provide a perspective here?
Yes,
Uh,
please.
When we were trying to rewrite this, we were focused on destruction of a structure that was non-conforming. We did not go in, so item C that the commissioner is referring to doesn't have anything to do with that. And if we want to go into changing this entire chapter, that's another sort of longer undertaking.
Yeah.
Commissioner Volkart has referred to sort of one way to look at it. You could spend a lot of time going through each of these sections and saying, do we have the right sections, the right words in here? But the purpose of this change was simply to address calamitous destruction of structures. And what do we do then? So either we undertake a big change to this whole chapter, which will take some time, or we focus for the moment the calamitous destruction of structures.
So we could,
And
Okay,
Good.
so
and
I
that's
wouldn't
what
have
the
even looked
council
at that.
request.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't have even looked at that except but in, one of the completely rewritten parts, it says notwithstanding subsection C. So it's like, notwithstanding, who says that besides lawyers? I don't even, really, it's like, is there any way we take that part out, the C part with that? Notwithstanding section C.
Well, and the purpose of if I may, Madam Chair, the
yes,
purpose
please.
of saying notwithstanding was to say, we're not going to address section C with respect to the calamitous destruction of structures. We're going to leave that there for now. So notwithstanding.
Oh, that's
that-
what notwithstanding means.
Yeah,
I thought it meant, I thought it pulled it into it. I didn't know it was like, never mind that, we're going down here.
It's
Okay,
Right.
Commissioner Riley, if I may, too, it's also the former C. It's the one prior to the one we're discussing. It's 0.040, I believe.
Right, it's
If you look-
18.195.040.
Notwithstanding subsection C of section 18.195.040, which is the one prior. We're talking about right now. We're stuck on 0.050. So just as a point of information. Thanks.
Yeah.
okay.
Different section, okay. Great,
oh, right. That's,
Sorry.
yeah, that's a good point.
yeah. Um, Yes,
So
Commissioner Riley.
why did we go from on two? Wait, God, I'm so used to a touchscreen. Why did we go from 90 days to 45 days?
I was gonna ask that. too.
E2.
Which numbers?
It's above that.
That seems like a short period of time.
Just continue some
Oh,
non-conforming.
geez.
If I may
Oh,
respond.
Yes, please.
Well, again, we were trying to address the situation where a structure is destroyed, involuntarily destroyed. And if you leave this provision as is and don't accept it out of there, then you have to replace it in 45 days. Well, when somebody's house burned down, there's probably no way they could ever replace it in 45 days. So what this provision as it is important for situations where there's not a structure destroyed and somebody has a non-conforming use and they stop that non-conforming use. If they stop it for more than 45 days, then it can no longer qualify as a legal non-conforming use. And we're trying to establish an exception to that when it's actually been destroyed and they really don't have any opportunity to replace it within 45 days, to resume that use within 45 days.
So can you give me an example when someone discontinued the use, like they abandon it, they close the shop and they move away kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah, they've got a car repair business that they've been doing, that's been done there for 30 years. And they stopped doing that. Well, you in that case, you actually want to get that zone so that it complies
With the rest of the neighborhood.
with the rest of the uses in that zone.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
so it doesn't have to be residential, it could be
No,
business.
right, exactly.
It's so hard to like,
I was just trying to think of
Outside the-
so you could abandon the house, you
Right.
could abandon the business, it could be
Right.
sitting there.
so it gives us a better
it's sort of like you-
opportunity, like you abandoned this. and
right. You basically gave up your right,
Right.
is what it's saying. You gave up your right to continue this type of business or this type of house. And,
Yeah.
right, so,
Yep.
If he was operating a mechanic
right,
shop in the residential zone district and had been for years and
right,
moved
Okay.
away.
got it.
Bye-bye.
Commissioner Riley, did you have another?
So this is where I start getting confused. And I even printed it without the red because I thought I was having trouble with the red. And I know that sounds stupid, but I feel like I really do not understand why we have like, so we have one that talks about 75% appraised value, all these things happen. And then what's the difference between 1 and 2, which read the same, unanticipated destructive event, 75% appraised value shall meet the criteria. What's the difference between 1, 2, and 3? They look the same to me. What am I missing?
So one has maybe restored and reconstructed subject to the following provisions. You have certain provisions that you must follow. All of them have 75% of appraised value. That's a given.
Some
And then-
say,
And then each of them have the different provisions listed in A, B, C, D.
So a non,
And that was just a standard of 75% of the appraised value. That's a very standard criteria in all non-conforming ordinances. So we reviewed several non-conforming ordinances and parsed them together and picked the best out of all of them.
so, okay, so in 1, it's less than 75%. And then in 2, it's exceeding 75%. And 3 is exceeding. And then, earlier we were talking about cubic feet and then. So the latitude that we're giving 20% here, 10% there. Stuff like that that's just common. That's what this is based on.
75% appraised value.
No,
What-
well, one of them says less than, and then one said, and the other 2 say more, but that could just be, a typo or something, but the
Yeah.
the values that we're allowing people to add to non-conforming uses, why are we doing that?
I'm sorry, I didn't. hear that.
So we're allowing people to, when they lose their home, rebuild, but we're saying that you can go 20% larger in square feet. I guess you're talking about the footprint. And then earlier we were talking about cubic feet, which made more sense to me. And then they can, add 10% more to their land coverage. And I was just wondering, it's like,
why?
why are we doing that?
Yeah.
We're allowing the structure to go more than the subject structure must not exceed the land coverage of the original structure by more than 10% and the 20%. A lot of people, when they rebuild, they want to rebuild bigger. They get insurance and they can
Yeah.
rebuild larger and they want to rebuild larger and we'll allow them up to 20%.
But
This is
if
a
it's a
present value zone.
non-conforming use, why, because all of our things are like, you can't do anything to enlarge or, increase the non-conformance.
That's the change. That's what we're
Right.
changing to.
I don't like it.
Okay. Commissioner Shapiro.
Really, it just seems,
Sorry,
I'm just gonna move on to.
no, it's fine. It just seems like, why do we that?
this is deliberation, yeah. Isn't it? This is deliberation, right? When we're talking about,
No, you're discussing you're not deliberating on how you're
So-
going to vote. You're
and I,
deliberating
you
on
know,
how you're trying to understand the ordinance, so you're fine.
You're asking
Because
questions.
on B and C, it's like, it seems kind of arbitrary, like, why are we, the subject must not exceed the square of the original structure? It just seems like, it should be based on the application.
this is deliberation.
No,
We are.
this is.
No, she's asking a question about the ordinance.
Okay.
And they can decide to make changes as well, correct?
Sure.
You have the ability of making changes if you don't like what's in the ordinance.
Because
And
it just seems kind of B and C, and I don't, B and C just seem like, why do they even need to be in there?
Well,
It's-
Yeah.
Yeah, because.
I could see in
Which-
some situation, I mean, if it was an
One-
old house that was pretty tiny and you would like to add 20% more.
But shouldn't it be based on if it was allowed, like if a bigger house was allowed in that area than what was originally there, wouldn't that be what it
But
was?
doesn't
based-
it say
No,
someone here, it
because it's
still has to be
non-conforming.
within the
because-
requirements of the,
Oh, 'cause it's
So,
non-con-
so a lot of time, well, as you all know, a lot of talent had small homes built on very large lots, and a
Mhm.
lot of people wanted to increase that square footage, and if if it's destroyed in a natural disaster, they would want to increase it by a certain amount, and there, so we put a
Oh.
cutoff of how much that could be increased, so that everybody, it was, because everybody has asked to increase, and we
Okay.
wanted to have an actual cutoff of how much increase that looks like. So everybody was the same. Okay, we have an ordinance that states you can go up to 20%
Okay,
more than your,
okay. Okay,
Madam Chair, if,
Yes.
more,
if-
yeah, more
if
more than
there,
20.
if we
no more
don't
than
have any
20%.
more technical questions, I
okay,
think we should close the public hearing and do the deliberating.
okay.
If,
Are there other questions?
Um, other than. Other than what, I mean, I just had one other question,
Okay.
which Joy did bring up, which is in the number one. Because what's crossed out does say exceeding 75%, but number one says less than 75%. And all the other ones say exceeding. Should that be more than or exceeding? Or is-
Number one is referring to a situation where you have a structure that is not completely destroyed. Let's say it's 50% destroyed. And what number one does is allow you to rebuild that non-conforming use without meeting these other requirements.
So that's intentional.
So,
Okay.
yeah, that is intentional. And then 2 and 3, following that, are cases where you do have the structure very substantially destroyed.
Okay.
And that's the case where you kind of want to look at it and say, all right, contrary to the zoning, but these are the circumstances in which we would allow that.
That
So
makes
that,
sense.
that help with the exceed in the, that makes much more sense. Okay, other clarifying questions? Right, well, then we can close the public hearing and deliberate on whether we want to vote on it, if we have other questions, or vote on it or continue it. So do I just,
Do you have are you asking for a motion?
to close the hearing?
No,
Or we could just close the hearing, right? Okay, so I would just say we'll close the public hearing. And now I guess I'll ask for a motion for,
and then discuss.
yes, and then we'll discuss it. Let's have, is there a motion? Commissioner Riley.
I don't have a motion, but since nobody else seems to have one ready either, I do have some items for discussion that I would like to bring up.
About this.
Yeah.
Different topic.
The price of shoes.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Since we don't have a motion on the floor. I was wondering if the deadlines for what did I put up? For, it's like 2 years.
Yeah.
But I know of a case in my neighborhood where the guy, and this was before the fire, it just took him forever to get through the process. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And so I was wondering if there could be language added about how, if there delays that are that are caused by events or entities outside of the property owner's actions or authority. If they could, like 30 days before the deadline, if they could apply for an extension, if they could prove that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing and things just weren't coming back in a timely manner. something like that. And the other thing that, one of the big frustrations we've had is that even though we knew that the city had adopted the policy of like for like, it was being used by people for their financial benefit. And I would like to see this, so like, you know, if we have a state of emergency that affects a lot of people and we just need freaking housing like right now, I get that, that, you know, they got to build something back as soon as they can and all that's got to happen. But it seems like if there's a state of emergency, that's different than if one person's house is destroyed by their personal catastrophe. And if in either of those events, if someone buys it from them, I don't think they should be eligible for a non-conforming use. I think that should be with the original property owner, not with someone who is using it for financial gain. If it's a new owner, I think they should have to meet the requirements of the zone.
And it not be non-conforming.
Do that.
Right? Because that's not rehousing. That's,
That's not how it is now.
no. No. We
Well,
have-
I've spent a fair amount of time researching that question, and my conclusion is that these are land use rules that run with the land, meaning you can't make it dependent on who the owner is.
So the city policy for like was for everybody.
That's what we've done so far in the fire,
Right. And
because it's a land use decision.
So it doesn't matter if
Point of
that,
information on that?
what was prior.
Right. Doesn't
Sorry,
matter who
Derek.
owns it.
Sorry, Kristen,
It
sorry.
doesn't matter who,
No,
owns
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
because it runs, like Dave said, it runs with the land.
Okay. Okay, Derek, sorry, now speak. We didn't hear.
Just, thank you. I'm sorry. It's hard for me to jump in with out of visual. The question is for the attorney. Is that, I understand that it has to follow the land, but does that mean that it, and not the owner, can it follow actions? So that once there's a change of ownership, that's the same, I assume in your research, that a change of ownership is focused on the owner and not the land, presumably. I hope that's clear.
I don't
Okay, I
understand.
think that, okay, so Derek, are you saying, well, I thought you were saying what we were just saying, that it's not based on the owner who owns it, it's based on the land use, so, well,
Well, I think Dave said something to the effect of you can't, base it on the owner. And what I'm trying to understand is, can you base disqualification of the non-conforming rebuild on ownership change or an action, whether it's title transfer or whatever, however you would word it. I'm sure Dave's looked at all that stuff, but I just wanted to understand that it is indeed, it has to follow the land. It has no, I mean, for instance, I'll leave it there if that's clear. And I'm sorry, I should say Mr. Lohman, my apology.
I didn't follow everything you said. It's hard to hear.
Yeah.
The speaker sort of muddles it a little bit, but I'm going to assume I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But whatever land use rule we establish, it doesn't change with who owns the land. That's the purpose of a land use rule. It follows the land. And you can't simply sort of arbitrarily say this type of owner cannot take advantage of these rules, but another type of owner can.
I understand that. And so that's why I wasn't focused on the owner. I was actually focused on the action, like the action of, say, title transfer or sale of property or whatever it might be, which doesn't focus on the owner. It's actually focusing on an action. Is the sale of the property a land use action, or it's a legal action?
That's a
Leave the
state-
owner out of it. You know what I mean?
If I didn't fully catch all of that, but if I understand it, the change of ownership is not an action that changes the allowable land use. And there are lots and lots of examples in state law that confirm that principle.
Thank you.
Commissioner Riley.
So if it's got to be the same for the land, how do we even have enforcement of the part of our non-conforming use that can make that right go away? Because it seems like if it was ever okay and it goes with the land and it was there, but we can though, because
At the time it was built, it was legally established. And zoning changes all the time and makes it illegal. Or non-conforming, not illegal, but non-conforming.
I guess I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand
If it
why.
wasn't legally established, it probably wouldn't be allowed to be rebuilt. We would first require that we determine whether it was legally established.
And you can put excuse me, I'm interrupting.
No, I just don't understand if you sell your or you sell the lot of a house that burned down, that the new owners do not have to conform to the zoning codes that are in place now.
If they built in what we requested is 2 years, they could build
But if somebody
Building
new
was-
bought it,
right.
What if they wanted to build it with the new zoning?
They certainly have every right.
They
to
can
build.
do that. So they can
Yeah,
build
but
they
But
could build
but they haven't,
townhouses.
But they haven't is the problem. And our intention of creating more housing by infilling our high density, close to
Right.
services on the
Mhm.
transportation. I mean, all of that. It's like, it didn't really
Well,
work
but I
out.
think, yeah, I guess I think it's important that people, if that's what they want to rebuild, that they should be allowed to be, because that's what they bought into.
I
To then be
agree.
forced to have to build something different. I appreciate that there's a clause or whatever you want to say that you still have the right to build what you lost, rather than now you have to build 3
Right.
apartments or whatever.
Right.
So I
But-
think that's.
But
what
my
this-
point
that-
is that these are people that are benefiting financially. We're losing housing stock and there's no like, oh, we love you. We want you to have your house back. It's just,
it's somebody new. That's what I
Yeah,
don't
But they're
understand.
new in a neighborhood that is established neighborhood, right? I mean, there's also other.
Gangness is the perfect example. It's all over the place now because different things got rebuilt, but some local developers went in there and bought one of them bought 8 lots and is cramming all these little single family things on there, and we could be having infill. And
Well,
that's
actually, that has
distressing.
been higher density. Much of that is more high density than it originally was.
Oh, and yeah, but it's still not the density that the zone requires. If
Well,
it was,
if I may,
Yes,
Madam
please.
Chair. If that's what you can say, actually, the ordinance now does say. If your house is destroyed, you can't rebuild it according to what is a single family dwelling in a high density zone. You have to build a multifamily. But when the council was looking at this, they were saying that seems awfully harsh to somebody who's just had their house burned down.
Right.
But-
And the idea here was to create some window within which whoever owns it can establish a structure that is very much like the one that was there before the catastrophe,
Or meet the
but only for a limited period of time.
But yeah, the thing though, where the lots were getting split up and teeny little houses put on teeny little lots. You know, you have three, it's called clusters, but you know, it's three in a row with a little alley beside them and that was never our intention. And our intention was,
But that's what our code allows.
I know,
That's actually more consistent with than putting a single family. That's consistent with.
but
the
it
high
still
density.
doesn't meet the density of the high density zone.
Actually, they are meeting a lot of the density.
Yeah, it's maybe something accidentally.
Okay, let's, other questions before, or if somebody want to entertain a motion, where we at?
So, yeah.
I don't have a, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Derek, we hear you.
No, my hand's up, and I'm sorry that this sound, is this any better or clearer?
A little bit.
Fine. Okay. So I thought, I wanted to follow up. I thought Commissioner Riley had a great point, and I think Commissioner Shapiro was making the point as well, that on regarding the, hang on just a second. The allowance to increase the square footage of the original structure and the land area coverage increase. I mean, I look at this and I recognize that prior to that, we captured the voluntary discontinuance aspect with the deliberate cause by the owner at the time of the destructive event language in 1A. Does that make sense? Or can you guys go to F on destruction of non-conforming use? On that notwithstanding that we already covered. What we're trying to capture with 1A, the damage to the structure must not have been deliberately caused by the owner at the time of the destructive event, is that we recognize that there may be people that want to deliberately destroy a structure, right? I think that's my first question.
That's the point. I think are you asking a question or that is the point of 1A?
Look, I guess what I'm saying is that if we have the awareness that a structure may be deliberately destroyed, intentionally destroyed, then I guess I want to say that I think it's probably wise not to provide for exceeding the square footage of the original structure and exceeding the land area coverage and keeping those allowances the same. I'm totally open to the points the commissioners staff or may have to counter that. It struck me as like, yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. And so I just wanted to state that if you guys have some thoughts on that going the other way, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'm sorry, did you
Can-
hear, did
let
you
me-
get what
let me-
Derek was saying?
Can I think because we've put 1A in there, it says the damage to the structure must not be deliberately caused by the owner at the time of destruction of the event. That's to prohibit any non-conforming rebuild. Is that what you're getting at? That you don't want that or you do want that?
No, I'm sorry. I probably complicated it by even addressing that. But as far as the, I guess I want to state that I don't see a reason to have the allowance to exceed the square footage and the land area coverage. And so I don't know, and I may have missed if there was an explanation as to why that absolutely should be in there, and I'm open to that. So is that clear?
No, this doesn't apply to any lot, structures or uses that were destroyed intentionally.
If you look at the beginning, or it's really the ending sentence above 1A, all of the following requirements have to be met. So if it was and one of those requirements is that it must not have been destroyed intentionally. So even if all the others are met, that one disqualifies them from rebuilding a like structure.
I understand that, and thank you. And so I guess I'm just setting that aside. I follow you. But I think Commissioner Riley made the point about exceeding the square footage and exceeding the land area coverage. And I don't see a reason to allow for those to exceed. Just given, like, why not just have it like for like as a non-conforming structure?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And yeah. So,
And the only, that's a judgment call by the planning commission council. And the only reason,
yeah, and I just wanted to agree with them. So that's what I'm trying to do. Thank
the only
you.
reason that those were included is because when we looked at virtually every other similar ordinance by other jurisdictions in the valley, as well as in other parts of Oregon and Northern California, virtually all of them allowed some, provided for some allowance of change. And it was usually in that range of maybe 20% of square footage. Some don't have any limitation on that. Hillsborough doesn't. But most of the cities in Oregon and Northern California that we looked at allow some additional square footage and allow some coverage of the land greater than that original structure had. But that's a judgment call that you all can make.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hazel, you had a question?
Yeah, well, I was just going, when Commissioner Volkart was commenting on this, that's what I was going to say. I mean, first of all, if they're allowed to build on it, doesn't mean that they're building that the size is exceeding what was allowed. It would still be single family. It's not like they're taking land away from what would be built otherwise. And I think that it was the intent at first when this came up. I know that's how I felt, and people have lost their homes. A lot of them might have had quirky homes, a small home, and just making it a little bit bigger. They have to go through this whole hassle of rebuilding, but they want to stay where they are. It didn't seem like too much to ask that they could make it more livable than it was prior. So within that limited time frame, this allowance of time for rebuilding after a disaster.
Right.
So
And for someone who went through it, I think it's really nice to be able to have that option. It would be really hard to be forced to build exactly what you had and not have any little flexibility. So I appreciate that there's some flexibility in it.
I was just,
She's doing math, just so everybody knows she's doing.
so,
Math's hard.
so if you lost a 1,500 square foot house, which would be pretty small by our standards, and you could make it 20% larger, that'd be an 1,800.
Yep,
300 extra square.
300 square feet actually.
So the gigantic house in Wagner Bridge, Old Bridge Village, that really big one,
That's a huge house. Yeah.
is that more than, is that more than 20% larger than,
They built an ADU on that as well.
well, just one ADU? Okay. Anyway, I was
It
just
is a
trying to
large house.
figure out
Yes.
if that 20% and 10% was a lot.
I think that they also have 2 lots.
I had a question about that. Like, how
Yes.
is that legal that you can buy a lot and just use it as a yard and it's fenced in with a very permanent looking metal fence? Is that
I mean, you
guess
could do
something
that
to
in
take
any
back.
subdivision. You
I
could
guess
buy
so.
another lot and use it as your yard.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, other questions?
Let me see. Okay, Henderson. Oh, I have one more.
Okay.
I think, it's, the last one on page 24, I believe, but it's improvement of certain non-conforming uses. And is this actually about incompatible uses? Like if, if like a residential butts up to industrial or something, does that put this one, is this about incompatible uses? Because it's about buffers.
I'm on page 23.
Where are you?
Is that,
It's improvement of certain non-conforming
Uh-huh.
uses.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's at the bottom,
Yeah.
18.195.060.
Because the only screening and buffering we require is if we're between incompatible zones. And yeah, and
I think, yeah, we're just allowing it. Once you've rebuilt, you have to. We should provide that screening and buffering. After the completing of the alteration, extension, repair, maintenance, restoration, or reconstruction allowed by this chapter, for structure containing a non-conforming use. That's strictly referring to the buffering and the
And
screening.
the purpose of the additional language was not to change the meaning of that provision at all, but rather to clarify it.
So once the use has been made whole after the disaster, then you have to go back and meet the criteria of the screening and buffering. That was
so how
once
come that they
established.
get 3 years for that and not, the 1 year or 2 years that the others allow?
They get 2 years plus an additional year, but I can't find where it says that. And then
An application of any building permit required for reconstruction, restoration, or must be submitted to the planning department within 2 years of destructive event, provided, however, city manager is authorized to extend the application deadline upon determining the extension is warranted by special unforeseen circumstances. That allows them additional time to submit an application for a building permit. It doesn't say the time frame.
Well, and the 3 years for
The buffering.
the screening and buffering, that's in the existing statute, existing ordinance already. And since screening can include growing things, it takes a while to do that. And that's, I assumed, why the 3 years was put in there in the first place, but I wanted to say, when does the 3 years start?
right.
Yeah, so that could.
Yeah, it's a good point because buffering could be trees or bushes and it takes a while to grow.
But yeah,
Yes.
but in our buffering requirements, we don't talk about, we talk about what they'll be at maturity, but they still have to go in when. Every other thing we have where there's an incompatible use that requires buffering, it goes in before they can get a COE.
Right.
So I don't, 3 years seems like too much. They should, because, if it is something that grows, even more reason to get it in sooner.
Right,
They should have done it yesterday.
right.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion, how best to word this.
It's right, it's over here.
I was looking for it, I didn't see it.
It's on,
It's in the,
I think that's the right one, but maybe not. Wait, hold on, make sure that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's it.
Yes.
Okay.
So I move to recommend that the city council adopt ordinance 2023 dash, this says.
we
actually-
don't have an ordinance.
Oh, we don't have an. So the proposed ordinance for the Talent Municipal Code Title 18, Chapter 18.195, non-conforming uses, lots and structures.
A second.
There's no second.
Can I forget, am I allowed to second or I can't participate?
I-
Right,
I have a
I just
motion.
vote. Okay, sounds like there's no second, there may be another motion on the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
It's,
the motion's at the end of the staff report.
yeah,
Yep.
it's, if you go up.
Vote
Right,
potential
right now,
motions.
I think. There it is. That's what Felicia just read. Right, yes.
What's the X's and O's?
But because it's not.
We don't have an
actually-
ordinance
Oh,
number.
okay. Oh, okay. I move to recommend the city council adopt ordinance 2023 to be numbered later for the town municipal code title 18, chapter 18.195, non-conforming uses and structures as proposed with the following changes. One, to be added language providing for extensions to deadlines for property owners if the delaying factors are outside of the property owner's control. And
Isn't that it?
the other one is that the 18.195.060 3-year allowed 3 years for buffering be changed to be required along with other building code requirements.
What was that change? I don't understand.
Just,
The one we just talked about, the
yeah,
buffering.
the one about the buffering for 3 years, I think whatever buffering, whether it's organic or material, it should happen before the COE. It should be,
Prior to the-
part, yeah,
Prior.
not 3 years later. Because if for no other reason, who's going to remember in 3 years? It's just like, it feels unenforceable and arbitrary.
What if the 3 years, though, does mean that that's when it's grown? And so then at 3
Our
years.
buffering doesn't
But
allow,
if the buffering is supposed to block the view or block whatever it is supposed to do, they've planted the plants, so that gets checked off and then they get a COE, but then they don't tend to them and they don't grow and there's no buffer. Would the neighbors have no recourse?
yeah, code enforcement. We have code enforcement for that.
But if it's not stated that way in the code.
Well, it should be stated in the way that all other requirements have to happen at the time of building.
Point of order, can we complete the motion, please, and then we can deliberate and discuss it if it's approved? I think we're on a motion. Thanks.
Right, we have a motion, but we don't have a second, so we're not at discussion yet.
So you-
So is there a second to this motion?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. Commissioner Hazel, do you want to
So
continue?
I would just want to be sure that we weren't eliminating that part of the code, that somewhere down the line there, that buffer would be there 3 years from now.
Yes,
So it actually, what Dave has added, it actually said it means prior to certificate of occupancy, because if you read the end of it, it says after completing the alterations, extensions, repair, and maintenance, restoration. So after that completion is done, we still have that, it has to be shown that the buffering and screening is within that 3 years. So the growth of 3 years, then would that buffering is, but it has to be done prior to certificate of occupancy. We require that anyway.
I agree with you that it's required, and that's why I find it distressing that it says 3 years, because people could read that to mean something else entirely. And our buffering requirements, those requirements are quite clear, and there's nothing in them about 3 years. So I don't see why this should be any different.
So why don't we just remove the 3 years? Would that work?
That, I thought,
Does
that's
that,
what I was trying to say in my
Okay.
broken English.
because with Dave's clarification, I think it's in there. 'Cause
I don't.
At the time of, you just made it more concise by putting prior to certificate of occupancy, which we could put in there as well.
I don't care how you do this. My motion just wants the 3 years to go away, and that it just be part of the building process the way it's supposed to be.
what page is that, but it's this right here. Why is it 3 years there to begin with? I don't really understand that.
We possibility of using plants.
Because they have 3 years to build it, because I think they have 3 years to build it.
There's like 1 year.
And they have 2 years plus an extra year.
Yeah, that part.
Yeah.
But no, nobody gets 3 years to do anything, so.
This verbiage here is talking about when that screening or buffering would actually happen.
We don't want. them
Right,
to
that's what
think they
she's-
can Wait 3 years.
The way Joy's interpreting it, it's like they have 3 years to put in the buffering.
Yeah.
And she's saying nobody else has that. All our building code says you have to do it before certificate of occupancy.
Could it be a fence? It could be trees. Right.
So Dave, did you have a response to
Well,
that? You have a question?
I don't remember what the buffering requirements are. What I'm concerned about is changing the language such that it requires hard screening and buffering so that instead of something that can grow. And I doubt
But-
that's what you were
Yeah.
trying to limit, but
Well, we have tree buffering.
I know,
Is that what you're
I know we
referring
do
to?
it, and it's between incompatible uses and incompatible zones, and it has to go in when everything's built. So it's like the street trees. We don't give people 3 years to put in their street trees. They're required to put them in when they build their house.
Can it just be the wording that follows the guidelines of the buffering code in our,
As per the required in our.
yeah, can
Yeah.
it just say that?
And
How- however-
landscaping and fencing.
That
Yes,
my
hedging.
My motion is on the table. It's been seconded. It stands. Just, eliminate the 3 year window.
To eliminate that.
At some point, can somebody repeat the motion?
I don't, nobody said. What did you say, Dave?
He wants me to repeat it.
Repeat the motion? Okay, hold
At
on.
some point, yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Okay. Commissioner Riley will repeat if she can, what she said. You can do it.
Verbatim.
My motion on the table is the same as is written in the staff report with the addition of adding extensions if delaying factors outside of the property owner's control affect the missing their deadline, and taking out the 3 year window for screening and buffering.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And this is a recommendation to council, correct?
Yes, I believe we're making a recommendation to council. We'll go to them next, yes.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Okay, we're ready to take a vote? All right, can we do roll call?
Commissioner Riley,
Yes.
Commissioner Shapiro,
Yes.
Bucalo is absent, Commissioner Hazel,
Yes.
Davis is absent, Vice Chair D'Amato,
Yes.
Chair Volkart.
Yes.
Look, went silent. Okay, so the motion passes.
Motion
Great,
passes.
great, thank you. Thank you.
Unanimous.
All right, getting the agenda. I think we might be done, but just want to double check. Okay, so the last thing is propositions and remarks from the commission.
But we have,
Is it something else?
we have a participant who raised his hand, and I just got
Oh.
a message about that, and I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to entertain?
Yes, the participant would like to make a comment. Is that what we think? Okay,
Can you elevate him?
Sorry, point of order, what are we entertaining,
We have a
public comments
we have a
on?
participant that would like to speak, and he can speak now. If he unmutes himself.
On what, the public hearing? Are we reopening the public hearing? I'm confused.
Do you want to reopen the public hearing, or do you want to keep it closed?
Not really.
No, I don't understand what,
I've already.
Yeah.
It could have been that, I don't know how long he's had his hand up. We don't know. Because we haven't been paying attention. I apologize.
Yeah.
We're getting used to this. So
Okay.
bear with us.
I guess we can open the public hearing since we're gonna have a person from the public answering. What's
Since
that?
we don't know.
Yeah, since we know, I would prefer we just open it. We'll just do it official. We'll reopen the public hearing,
We don't know if that's what he wants to talk.
but until,
that's correct.
Derek, can you hear us? Derek Manzi?
Yeah, I'm here. I didn't want to make this a big thing for you guys, so I'm happy to submit my comment in writing if that just make everything easier for the commission. It was just a response to some conversation you guys had about the non-conforming use, just an idea I had I wanted to throw out there.
That's fine. And then we'll also have another, this will go before the city council as well.
Okay, I think chat's closed, but if you can just give me the appropriate email to send my written correspondence to.
You can send it to myself.
Okay, thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.
great. We'll try to be more observant next time.
Well, who normally who would be watching that for these things? That's not us. I mean, that's,
I mean, you're the chair.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't even,
But-
I had my,
So it is.
why is it so loud?
It's you.
Am I like all of a sudden really loud?
No,
Oh, okay.
you just are hearing yourself and.
Oh, okay. I had my documents over the screen,
We all.
so I
have-
couldn't see it. So now if I'm chair again, I'll make sure I'm,
You have to multi.
yeah, you have to multitask.
Well, that's my screen. So that hasn't always been up.
Oh, joy.
All right. Okay, so we'll move on. So the next thing is propositions and remarks from the council. Commissioner Riley. I could see you from the side. I don't.
So-
but-
I have had a list of things that I wanted us to talk about for ages, and we've never had a place where it felt like we could just talk about stuff, and maybe we could have work studies or something, but
Mhm.
I would like it. It's things like, I'd like to, like cluster housing. I would like for us to like take a lot and go through it. Because when I did that with cluster housing, there were unanswered questions. And so I think that would be a good fun way to check it out, and see how that works out. And architectural review, I want to talk about codifying element F, a whole thing with minor land petitions and flag lots and unclear street standards. So I can make this list and send it in, but I would really like us to figure out a way to just talk about the things that we see and want to, plan,
Mhm.
because there's a concept.
And traditionally, how do we add that as agenda items or?
We could, if everybody had things I'm sure I'm not the only one with some burning issues, and
Mhm.
maybe we could look at them and decide, like, over the next year, we'll, get the first 3 done or something like that. And work studies
Right.
can happen if people don't mind an extra meeting.
Mhm, mhm. Or start a little, or like a 6 to 6:30. And
Yeah,
before
most of mine
that's
would take
more.
a meeting,
we take a whole meeting, okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
but
She would
so
establish a work.
I guess what I'm asking is, since we didn't figure out tonight a way to get things on the agenda yet. And I don't want to decide, like, I want this on this agenda, I just I want us to compile our own issues together and look at them and prioritize them and try to move forward with them. I know Felicia's brought up night sky a million times, which is huge for me too, and it'd be more fun than the nuts and bolts stuff we have to do.
Mhm.
So I guess what I'll do is just write down my ideas and then send them to staff, and maybe you could just put that list on the agenda. If that works, and we
You just want to talk about the list?
And
Yeah.
how to address them. I think
How to-
then
yeah.
how we'd want to address them, whether it's a work
Work
study
studies.
or work session,
meetings
whatever.
or- Yeah,
Have to abide by the council rules as well, the goal setting that they put forward for us too, so those are priorities as well.
yeah, I know.
So something has to.
This is, it's, some of these I think are important, and some of them are just like a wish list, but. Yeah.
Okay, okay, great. I did have something. Because I guess this was because of the meeting in May where only two of us showed up. I guess I feel like I want to be more consistent that when people aren't coming, who they're contacting. And to be sure we're consistent in how we're contacting people so that we know who to expect and who not to expect. I know that, I think Derek and I reviewed it and it said they could either contact the staff or the chair. And that seems odd that you could contact two different people. I would prefer either we contact both of them or one, because it feels like it doesn't always, we don't always get all the information. So we don't have to make it, I'm just saying that that's my comment tonight, that I felt like we didn't really have a good sense of who was coming and who wasn't. So I just asked that we are more communicative. But I do feel like it's odd that we have the choice of one or the other.
Maybe we should add that to the discussion next time.
Yeah, I'd like to, if we could do that.
To get the list of
Yes.
items.
Who you want to call?
Who do you want to call? Okay.
Okay.
Any other remarks?
I had what's
Yes.
on the same line sort of is attendance issues and I feel like, a lot of people want to be involved in this, but if they don't have time, if it's not, if the reality dictates that they can't be here in general because of whatever their occupation or life is at this time, it might be, they should consider opening that spot for somebody else who actually does have time to be here. And then, and I thought of that day also, that it's not fair, and it's not fair to the community to not be able to be here and just hold that spot. And I know that if you miss three sessions without a good reason, you can, be booted, but you can even be with a good reason. But if it's, fairly consistent that a commissioner can't attend the meetings, then I just feel like they need to reassess whether this is a good fit in their lives at this time. Okay.
Great. Other comments, remarks?
Then have anything else?
No, she's dying to say something, I know. Okay, well, if there is not anything else, then we will adjourn the meeting at 8:22.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
So
Can we turn these things off now?